Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The FCC has come out with a new broadband funding map. Now, this is not the broadband availability map that we're all waiting on, that we anticipate will come out here, I believe, in the next, this month, in the next week or two. I'm hoping that we'll see the broadband availability map. But this is a broadband funding map that shows where previous funding has been committed or is pending or whatever, or even, I guess, deployed. And we'll take a look at that. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Uzzi here at Broadband Deployment News with Zcorum, presented by Zcorum. So this came out, this public notice, so I wanted to make you aware of this. I believe if I remember, I linked to the place where you can see this public notice in the description. If not, I'll get it at the end of the video, but I think I did, as well as the map. So you see here, it's a public notice that came out May 15th. The Office of Economics and Analytics, in conjunction with the Wireline Competition Bureau, announces the release of the broadband funding map. And here's a link to that map right here. And this is part of the IIJA. It requires the commission to establish, and this is the IIJA, that's what the BEAD program is under, where the $42.45 billion is going to be allocated. So we're waiting on the availability, the first production version of the FCC map, where availability will be shown, the kind of the final map that's going to determine how much each state is going to get. But this is something that was required also by the IIJA. They were required to establish an online mapping tool to provide a locations overview of the overall geographic footprint of each broadband infrastructure development project funded by the federal government. And right now, it's kind of incomplete and not exactly finished from when I look at it. We'll take a look at it. But the map released today contains data received from the Department of Agriculture, USDA. So you would think that would include reconnect funds. I don't know if it does when I was looking at it. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong name for it. The NTIA, the Department of Treasury, as well as the Commission's own data. Any funding data that are submitted to the Commission by other federal agencies in the future will be added to the map as part of regular updates. The broadband funding map allows users to identify, search, and filter federal funding programs by the internet service provider receiving funding, the duration timeline, the number of locations included in the project, and the download and upload speeds. In addition to depicting where broadband funding exists, the broadband funding map contains broadband availability data as of June 30th, 2022. So maybe that's why I'm not seeing as much on there as I would anticipate. The same data that currently appears on the National Broadband Map. So I guess that means if there's been funding since June 30, 2022, I guess it doesn't appear on there. So this next map should be up to date as far as December 2022, because that is what this latest broadband fabric is based on. Although there have been challenges and whatnot to that data on availability. So I don't know when the data will be available as far as this broadband funding. Maybe it will be December, or maybe it'll be later. I don't know. But right now it's saying the same data that currently appears on the National Broadband Map, which was currently as of June 22nd, or June 30th, 2022, excuse me. And the next broadband map, again, the data should be availability data as of December, the end of December. I don't know if that's December 31, 2022. So that should be the next map that we're looking at. When the Commission releases more recent availability data on the National Broadband Map, the broadband funding map will be updated as well. And you can see why when we look at these two maps together, which we'll do. It's because they really look like the same fundamental map with some slightly different information in there. So frankly, they should combine the two. And maybe that's the plan. I don't know why that wouldn't be the plan, is that they'll just have a FCC broadband map. And in that map, they can show availability data, and they can also show any areas that have been funded. For example, you should be able to look on the broadband availability map and see, especially after BEAD comes out, oh, okay, I don't have broadband now, and I know this, but I'm looking and I see that BEAD funding is going to be allocated to my area. And then maybe eventually who will be doing that, which service provider will be providing that service. So I don't see why you wouldn't have one map, and you will see that as we look at it. So let's take a look at the maps. So first, when you come here, again, it looks very much, this is the broadband funding map, not the broadband availability map. And as you see, it looks very much like the broadband map, but you've got a couple of things you can look at here. You can look at a location summary, a funding summary. You can download data. I can also look at specific programs. So I did look at those, and I was noticing, that's where I was saying this does not look complete, because I looked at Capital Projects Fund, for example, and if I look at that, it zoomed into West Virginia, and I'm like, well, why did it do that? And as I scroll out, it's because that's the only thing that's on here. And there's been a lot of money that's been given out through the Capital Projects Fund. So this is all I'm seeing is this little bit here. Maybe it's because it's back from June, and most of the money that's been announced has been since then. I guess that's could be the reason for that. So I was just thinking of that as I was just going through this with you, because I was looking at it earlier, and it's like, why is it not on here? And if I go back to home, you can look at other things. For example, Capital Projects Fund, rural. These are the RUS ones. So there's the Reconnect program, and I don't know if any of these are Reconnect. I don't know if that's a rural what is that? Rural e-connectivity. Maybe that's rural. Maybe that's the Reconnect. That's probably it. That's Reconnect. So here I can go in here and I can look at these. So yeah, there's obviously a lot more data on here, and I can go in and I can see where these funds have been committed, or let's take a quick look. I'm scrolling in. So you get these hexagons, and then as you scroll in on the hexagons, some of them will disappear because you're looking at big areas and going to small areas. So you can see it's getting more granular as to where these funds are. And this is a little confusing here because as I get in close, I've got these hexagons, and the way I read this is that all of these locations are getting broadband funding, and I can see here it's the RUS, Rural E-Connectivity Program, so that must be Reconnect. I can see that's as far as the speeds for this location's planned, minimum 1, max, this is the number of locations, 1 to 964,000. So I don't know that's not the locations in this little section here, obviously. You got your start and end dates. So this was 2018 to March 2023 was the start date, and the end date from 2022 to January 33. So I guess maybe 10 years on some of these things. So it's a little confusing. Others may understand this better, but you can see here that the speeds on this 2.2 megabit per second or greater up and down. So these are older awards. What happens with this? This is not broadband, and yet we've got funds that are going here. So I don't even want to get into that topic right now, but I was just looking at the map. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 locations in here. If I scroll in any further, that's basically what I'm going to see. And when you do it this way, you can't see who this is. I can't click and see what, let me go back out again, what these locations are. I can, so I wanted to look at some other places. So I'm going to go back here to home. And I was going to look at RDOF, and again, scroll in here. So I wanted to look at some locations, and actually I think I brought it up here. No, that's not it. So I was scrolling in, I was like, okay, well, let's see what's on RDOF. So as I scroll in, and I was noticing this, so I was going to look at a couple of weird, odd things, just because I find odd things interesting. So I'm scrolling in, I'm like, wait a minute, this is in Metro Atlanta. I know there's service in these areas, so why are they having funding from RDOF going to this from the FCC? So you see down here, this is RDOF, FCC. So I'm scrolling in, that's Tucker. I didn't want to look at that. That is one area, but this was actually the area I was looking at. This is closer to me, and I know, like I say, I know this area well. So as I scroll in, I've got this one hexagon. Again, as I scroll in, it gets smaller. So here I am. So what does this mean? I didn't know when I was first looking at it as far as how many locations are in this. If I click here, I can see the locations plan. So this is talking in total, I think here, obviously 11 million locations, and then the funding that's obligated. So, but that's obviously not just for this section. But as I scroll in here, it looks like it's encompassing, does that one? I thought one's right on the edge. What about that? What about that? That one's pretty much inside. So which of these places are actually in here as far as funding, and why? Because again, this is smack in the middle of kind of North Metro Atlanta, where there's lots of providers. It doesn't show me that here because I haven't looked up any addresses. So I was like, well, how do I figure out who these people are? I can't click on it and figure it out. So I went to the broadband map. So this is the funding map. I went to the broadband map, and I zoomed in on the same area. So let me look at this. Let me go in a little closer here. I think I'm in the same area. Let me see. That's Chatsworth. Hold on here. I thought I had looked at this. Ah, I didn't. Okay. Or did I? Oh, here it is. Yeah, this is it. I just had the wrong spot. Okay. So this is the same area as I come in here. So I looked up the address. So here we are. So this is the broadband funding map. So actually what I did is I went to the broadband map. Now remember, I went to the broadband map, and there I zoomed in and I was able to pick a location, and I got an address, and then I put that address into the broadband funding map. So you can go here in the broadband funding map, and you can type in an address and pull it up, and then it brings you to this, basically. So you pull an address. So I'm looking at this address here in Kennesaw, Georgia. So I'm looking at the same map. It's just in this case, I've pulled it up by address. And when I pull it up by address, I get more information that it must be pulling in from the broadband map, so I can see who's served and who's not. And in this case, I don't have any filters. Actually, I do. Yeah, so I'm going to change it to all wired and close that. So I'm looking at, so all of these are served through some kind of wired technology. In fact, these are the two places. So as I look at this, these two are the ones that are funded by RDOF. So there's two locations, have no idea why. And if I look at availability down here, again, this is coming from the broadband map. I've got AT&T fiber there. I've got Comcast cable, plus I've got a couple of satellite things that don't really count. So I've got two very fast internet providers here in this location that would be providing to all of these locations, including these ones that are supposed to get RDOF funds. So this has got to be a mistake. When mistakes happen on the maps, and I'm assuming that's what that is. I just didn't make any sense. Then I noticed this location out here that's sitting out here as unserved, and the only thing I can determine there is, again, that's either a mistake where Comcast or AT&T, both Comcast and AT&T forgot to put that in their information, or this could be a new building that was brought up at this time and was not in June 2022 when this data was available. That was not there, or was not considered a broadband serviceable location. Or maybe it wasn't on the map for some reason, and they didn't therefore add their services to that as being served, so, or being available. I should say served by Comcast or AT&T. So that was a little odd, but this is really odd that you've got these two locations here that are showing that they're getting RDOF funds. So we scroll up, we see RDOF on that one and RDOF on that one. Of course, I click any of these others, so it says funded there. It's supposed to get 1,000 by 500, and this is a relatively recent. This is not the USDA. This is not like USDA Reconnect. This would be a relatively recent funding that would have been sent out to Windstream. It says it's for Windstream for 1 meg by 500, but yet they already have over that from two operators here. And if I click on any of these, they're all going to show not funded, obviously, and they're going to show the same providers that can get service at these two locations. So that's got to be a mistake somehow on the FCC's database. That's my only conclusion there. I also looked for some areas in, we'll go back to here. I'm going to come on out. So I looked for some areas in North Georgia where it would be more likely that you would actually have an area that should be funded. So as I'm looking at here is Chattanooga, Dalton. I was scrolling in this direction. I was looking here by Lake Carter's Lake. So as I come in and scroll in, I've got these areas here. So it's the same thing. As you scroll in, your hexagons get smaller as you're getting more granular. So now I've got these areas, and it's showing me that these areas are kind of within the funding areas. So I'm looking at these. These are not in there for some reason, but these are. So I did the same thing. I went and found an address on that. Let me move this over. That's Kennesaw. And so this is the area here. Let me scroll in a little bit. Is that about right? Yeah, so here's Old Highway 41. Here's Carter's Road. So there's these three locations that are showing as served for some reason. I thought that was odd. So I don't know why. These show that they can get Charter at a gig by 35, all three of these as I click on them. But yet all of these around here don't get that. I don't understand that. So this could be a mistake on Charter's side, where they maybe said, we serve these and we don't for some reason. I don't know why there would be three homes. If they've got cable plant out here, there'd be no reason at all other than the fact that people wouldn't want to take it. And that doesn't matter, actually. I'm sorry, that's not the way this works. So it doesn't matter whether these people would want to take it. It would just mean that Charter could serve these locations, and I don't know why they wouldn't if they have cable plant out here, unless they're trying to charge people. They don't actually have it to the point where it can be ordered or delivered within 2 weeks, because for something to be considered available, the service provider has to be able to do a standard installation and then like within 2 weeks be able to connect them up. So maybe these were special things where people called and they said, well, it's going to be a month. We got to charge you $1,000 setup fee because you have a long driveway. They don't look that long, not these two anyway. So I don't know if that's what it is, but 3 of them here are showing as being served, and I don't know why. So this is the broadband map. This is not the funding map. Let's look at this is the funding map. So again, I found the address by going to the broadband map. I was able to zoom in and find a couple of addresses. You click on a dot and you get an address. So I looked at these, and what I'm finding is these are the locations that are funded. So I've got any of these that are yellow are. So as I click on any of these, you're seeing these are funded through Windstream, RDOF to get a gig by 500, and these are all showing as not served right here. And of course, the ones with the green circles around them, this one here is not showing as funded, and it shouldn't be if this really is true where Charter can provide this kind of service. But these are showing as funded and getting service. And these over here, right across the way, don't know why, these are not funded through RDOF. So Windstream did not go in and try to get these. Now it is across the road here, and maybe maybe there's some issues with extending their plant. Maybe this was an area where they already had infrastructure and they could go ahead and bid on that inexpensively. Maybe somebody else bid on this who did not get approved. I don't know what the deal is, but we've got all of these homes or locations out there that are not served, and we've got these that are also not served, but that are going to get RDOF money. So I don't understand that. So I got, again, broadband funding. There's nothing there. Data not available, because that's not one. And then I can click here and I can see the RDOF stuff. And if you click this, it opens up some info. So it tells you specifically here the funding obligated. And this does seem to be Windstream's total funding. It doesn't say how many homes this applies to. It may be all of the ones that are in these particular hexagons that we were looking at. So you can see an amount here, the $147 million. That's Windstream RDOF 2. And it mentions some info here. So you've got a few more details there. So as I scroll out, let's see, let me scroll out here on this one. This one, okay. So this may be, again, I don't have any, let's see if I scroll that. This is a whole bunch of money about RDOF. So I don't have anything specifically selected here. So I'm just looking at this. So I don't know. This could be all of what Windstream is covering right here, but I don't know from that. If I go back to here, where was it? This is it. So I see all these yellows. So this one shows yellow. What does this say? This is showing Windstream also. So again, I got that, and I got that, but I don't have that. Got anything else here? None of these are funded. So those seem to be the areas there. So that seems to be Windstream all up through here as well. That's the other end of things, and that also is RDOF Windstream. And as I click on this, it's all going to say the same thing. So I'm assuming, I don't know if this 147 million is just for those that we're seeing in those areas kind of that hexagons were over, or if this is a wider area that we're not actually looking at as far as Windstream goes. So again, I think there's some interesting anomalies on here. You can always find that, I think. I just find them interesting. So again, that's why I showed you. But this, again, is a map that could be helpful, although I find that as I haven't looked at it completely in every way, but I find as I go through it that I'm not, unless I drill in on an address, I'm not necessarily getting that much information. So I can go in on summaries, funding summaries, downloads. Let's see, funding summary, that's this. So I've got my different things here, and I can scroll in, and I can see what's going on. I can look at any of these where I've got dots. Yeah. So my dots show broadband serviceable location. The blue is a funding available area. But again, I don't have information as to which of these locations are included. Just because it's within the hexagon, as we've seen, it doesn't mean, it could mean just this one. As we saw when I was looking at in Kennesaw, it's just these 2 locations are funded. Again, I have no idea why. I think that's a mistake, but it's just showing these 2 as funded. But when you looked at the broader, I don't know because I have it there. Is that, no, that's not it. So when you looked at the broader, when you scrolled out and you've got the hexagons, it was showing you that all of these locations were somehow included in that. So I don't know what that means. So anyway, again, you can go ahead and look at the description of the video, and you will find a link to the map, a link to that public notice if you want to, a link to the map, and go ahead and scroll around and see what you can find. I think it's an interesting map, but again, I don't know why they would not just combine this data with the FCC broadband map. And it doesn't sound like they're going to be doing that anytime soon, certainly not for this next broadband map, I don't think. Otherwise, I don't know why they would have brought this out as a separate map right now. With the next broadband map due to be out here anytime, I would think they should both be together, and that you'd be able to, when you zoom in on the funding side, you'd be able to get more information if you could, click on the different dots on the map, that you'd be able to get the address and see what's going on there, rather than having a lookup address. I think it's more interesting for service providers to look at and for communities to look at to see, okay, where is funding? And they can get a kind of a broad idea, but they can't really get details from that. Maybe if you download stuff, but I don't know. Thanks for joining me. If this was interesting, if you would give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. And subscribe. If you're not subscribed, click the bell to be notified when I'm live. And I'll be live tomorrow. See you then for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.